Hello, Namaskar. This is Firstpost and you're watching Vantage with me, Palki Sharma. It's been an interesting news day. War has taken a backseat and thank God for that. In focus tonight is a national sale in China, where the government is offering discounts on washing machines and cars. You may ask why. This is their grand plan to revive the Chinese economy. Does it make sense? Will it work? We'll bring you the projections. Meanwhile, in the US, college campuses have become political battlegrounds. There are widespread protests and arrests over the Israel-Hamas war. In West Asia, Turkey and Iraq have signed a major deal. We'll tell you why this is politically and economically significant for the region. In the UK, Rishi Sunak's controversial Rwanda deportation bill has been passed. Why is it a win for the Prime Minister? How deepfakes are disrupting the election in India, with dead leaders turning up to campaign. Why Pakistan's ban on X is a problem, but America's impending ban on TikTok can be justified. Is Russia jamming GPS of flights over Europe? What will this appraisal season look like? What is a dry promotion? Why Saudi Arabia's NEOM project is in trouble, and why trying something new will help you. We'll explain the headlines first. Over 200 aftershocks hit Taiwan. It comes more than 2 weeks after a deadly earthquake struck the island. The tremors lasted for over 12 hours. There were no casualties. On the 3rd of April, Taiwan was hit by its strongest quake in 25 years. Since then, there have been more than 1,000 aftershocks. Hezbollah says it has launched a drone attack on Israeli bases. Earlier today, an Israeli drone strike killed one of its members in South Lebanon. This is Hezbollah's deepest strike into Israeli territory since the Gaza war began. Since October, tensions between the two have been escalating. Ukraine wants to bring military-aged men home to fight against Russia. This month, Kiev toughened penalties for draft dodgers and also lowered the age of mobilization by 2 years to 25. Ukraine is struggling in the battlefield amid relentless Russian attacks. Armenia and Azerbaijan start border demarcation work. It's part of the normalization efforts between the regional foes. Last month, Yerevan agreed to Baku's demand to return 4 border villages. The two countries have been locked in a decades-long conflict over Nagorno-Karabakh. And good news for Italian travelers, the new Schengen visa rules will ease travel to Europe. Indians can now get multiple entry Schengen visas with an extended validity period. 25 out of 27 European Union countries are part of the Schengen area. Our lead story tonight is about the greatest sale on earth. And no, this is not at your local supermarket or e-commerce platform or your favorite fashion label. This is about an announcement in China. Their government has launched a great sale for the people, for them to buy new cars and appliances like washing machines. And they're being offered big discounts by the Chinese state, meaning the government is subsidizing these purchases. Just imagine this, an entire country being offered subsidies for shopping. And not just any other country, this is the world's second largest economy. But why is China doing it? Why is it so desperate to send its people shopping? Because their economy is hurting and they want to revive it. The Wuhan virus tanked their growth and President Xi Jinping made it worse. Now, to be fair, China's GDP grew by 5.3%. This was in the last quarter. So not so bad for an economy of their size, but the target they set was much higher. And this is the slowest growth in many, many years, so Beijing is quite worked up. And this is the solution they've come up with, a national sale sponsored by the government. This is what they plan to do. Beijing is in charge of the planning. Local governments have been roped in for the execution. They've been given broad priorities and targets to get people to buy household appliances, like your daily appliances and cars. People should buy them and replace or upgrade their old ones. And for that, they will get discounts, especially on electric cars, also on air conditioners, refrigerators, and washing machines. They will all be subsidized to encourage people to buy. The government also has a plan for heavy industries like your petrochemical and steel. Here the focus is on machinery and equipment. And the first announcement has come from the city of Suzhou. It is located in the east. This city has launched its subsidy program. Suzhou has set aside over $13 million for car subsidies. So if a local resident wants to get a new car, they can get a discount of almost $1,000. For appliances, they have set aside over $2 million. There's a discount of around $200 for every item you buy. And other Chinese cities are expected to roll out similar offers. But how does it help the government? How will this sale boost China's economic growth? Beijing is betting on simple rules of economics. Boost spending to revive growth, get more people to buy by offering discounts. And this should bump up sales, or so they hope. But here's what experts say. Retail sales will see a jump of just 0.5%. And this will lift China's economy by 0.6%. That's what Goldman Sachs is predicting, 0.6% growth. Here's another report. It says China's growth will rise by 0.7% after this exercise. So the overall impact will be modest. This grand sale may not have a big bang effect. If Beijing wants a meaningful jump, it may want to look at its military budgets and by extension, its priorities. They need urgent revision. A top American general has made a statement. His name is Admiral John Aquilino. He is America's Indo-Pacific commander, and he says the Chinese economy is failing. Their economic data is quote-unquote not real, and despite this economic crisis, they're spending aggressively on the military. In fact, let me quote from what he said. Despite a failing economy, there's a conscious decision to fund military capability, and that is concerning to me. Well, it may or may not be concerning to him, but it should bother the people of China. They've had an unwritten, unspoken pact with the Communist Party. It continues to rule as it pleases. It continues to curb political and other freedoms, and in return, it delivers growth and economic prosperity for the people of China. That's been the deal so far. But now the Communist Party is not delivering its side of the bargain. The prosperity they promise is at risk. The Chinese economy needs a bailout, a real stimulus package, not discount coupons for appliances and cars. But Xi Jinping won't do that. He has put the military above the economy so that the PLA can fight future wars. The question is, who will bear the cost of this military supremacy that he's aiming for? How will Xi Jinping fund these wars if the Chinese economy tanks? It's a vulnerability that the US wants to exploit. Reports say Washington is looking to sanction Chinese banks. We don't have the names yet, but we can tell you on what grounds these sanctions could be imposed. The US accuses Chinese banks of helping Russia and its war machine. Now, Russia's banking system, we know, is already under international sanctions. The charge is that Chinese banks are helping Russia circumvent these sanctions. At least that's what the US says. China, of course, denies it.
It is extremely hypocritical and irresponsible for the US to introduce a large-scale aid bill for Ukraine while making groundless accusations against normal economic and trade exchanges between China and Russia. China firmly opposes this.
The US Secretary of State Antony Blinken is visiting China this week. Will he bring this up? Well, we'll have to wait and see. But one thing is quite clear. China's economic boom fueled its rise as a global power. And now China's president has overplayed his hand. So both the economy and the power are at risk. The United States has a new battleground. It's their college campuses. We're talking about elite institutions here, like Yale, Columbia, and MIT. All of them have been gripped by student protests. Over what? Israel's war in Gaza. It has split these campuses down the middle. We'll start with Columbia. Protesting students occupied the campus lawn last week. And what did they want? Support for Palestine. They asked the university to disclose ties to Israel, also any aid they received from companies investing in Israel. But this protest was not authorized, so the college called in police officers. Around 100 students were arrested and taken away. Take a look at this.
United, we'll never be defeated. History, you can't hide. History is on our side. Free Palestine! Free Palestine! Free Palestine!
That was Colombia. But now the protests have spread. On Monday, students at New York University began demonstrations. They occupied a plaza in Manhattan, again without permission. So late at night, the police moved in. They arrested dozens of students. Finally, there were protests in Yale. Dozens of students blocked roads near the campus. Around 45 of them were arrested. Imagine if this happened in Delhi or Dhaka. Students dragged away and arrested from their campus. Protests broken up by police officers. The Western outrage would have been immeasurable. But now the world is silent. No criticism, no lectures or outrage. It's as if arresting college students is business as usual. Just another day in the land of freedom. But all of this raises an important question too. Why are US colleges so divided? And it's not just these elite ones. Campuses across the country have reported protests. There seem to be two camps here. One is the pro-Palestine camp. They condemn Israel's war in Gaza. They also want their college to disclose any ties to Israel, maybe a donor or an investment or a corporate partnership. This group says the US and Israel are conducting a genocide. The other side is the pro-Israel camp. They ask, how can you forget October 7th? Why don't you criticize what Hamas did? Even President Joe Biden has waded in. He condemned anti-Semitism on US campuses.
I condemn the anti-Semitic protests. That's why I've set up a program to deal with that. I also condemn those who don't understand what's going on with the Palestinians.
This is tricky for a couple of reasons. A, colleges have become very diverse, so it's not just an ideological battle for the students, it's also a personal one. Some of them may be of Arab descent, others may be Jews, so the passions can fire up quickly. And B, both sides have a point. You cannot deny that Israel has crossed many red lines in Gaza. You also cannot deny what happened on October 7th, and therein lies the problem. Neither side is willing to listen to the other. Both camps are sticking to extreme positions. So what's the way out? Well, first up, you must acknowledge the problem. Around 73% Jewish students have experienced anti-Semitism on US campuses. It has only increased after the Hamas attack. Same with Islamophobia. Anti-Muslim incidents increased by 216% after October 7th. So both communities are under threat. The question is, what should be done? It's easy to crack down on student protests. It's also easy to trash the idea of student politics. But that's not the answer. College politics plays an important role in every society, and the US, of all places, should know this. In the 1960s, campuses became the hub of protests against the Vietnam War. Eventually, they forced the US to end that war. So student politics is not the problem. How it's carried out may be a problem. For starters, you cannot let it be hijacked. There are career protesters out on the streets, people who have nothing to do with students or colleges. They see a protest and they jump in. And Colombia's president is worried about this. Look at her statement. These tensions have been exploited and amplified by individuals who are not affiliated with Colombia, who have come to campus to pursue their own agendas. And this is not just a Colombia problem, it's a problem everywhere. So it's important that student protests are carried out by students, not political parties, not activists, and not NGOs. Equally important is peace and decency. Your protest cannot cross certain red lines, but in many US campuses, it has. We've heard chants like death to Israel, death to Zionists, and even some pro-Hamas slogans. Listen to this student protester at Columbia.
Keep it moving, you Zionists. Keep it moving, you Zionists.
We are Hamas!
You're Hamas, wow. That's a good one. You're what? You're Hamas?
Yes, we're all Hamas, pig!
Now, this cannot be accepted. Your freedom of expression cannot be a call for genocide. Same with violence. Just consider what is happening in Colombia, and all in-person classes have been cancelled there. Why? Because teachers and students cannot reach the campus. They've been blocked by pro-Palestine groups. Again, this is not acceptable. So what we need is moderate politics. You're free to disagree with other students, but you must hear them out first, and you cannot abuse or cancel them. Plus, student demands must be carefully thought through. Asking your university to criticize Israel is one thing, but asking it to abandon Israeli donors is quite another. There's a lot at stake here, maybe scholarships or infrastructure projects or faculty payments. So it's not a call for students to make. It's a decision that is taken by responsible administrators, and the students must remember this. Their protests and voice carry a lot of weight, but it must be exercised responsibly. War is not the only thing happening in West Asia. There is progress too, and it's coming from an unlikely place: war-torn Iraq. On Monday, Turkish President Erdogan visited the country. It was a pretty rare visit for him. Erdogan last travelled to Iraq in 2011. And since then, relations have suffered. So this trip was all about resetting ties. He got a guard of honor in Baghdad. He met the Prime Minister of Iraq and signed around 20 deals. One of them stands out: a 4-way agreement for a transport corridor. It's called the Development Road Project. The plan is to link Iraq's Gulf Coast to Turkey. How? With a series of roads and railways. And from Turkey, this route can extend to Europe. So basically, a Europe to Asia corridor. How much will it cost? Around $17 billion. Along with Iraq and Turkey, 2 other West Asian players are involved. That's the UAE and Qatar. Their ministers were also in Baghdad on Monday. All of them signed an agreement to build this corridor. But how will it impact the region? For Iraq, it could be a game changer. Better infrastructure, easy access to oil fields, and more trade. They may not have the funds to do it alone, but with Qatar and the UAE, they can. Same for Erdogan. He wants to leverage his country's location. You see, Turkey straddles 2 continents, Europe and Asia. So it's prime real estate for a cross-continental corridor. Erdogan says the project will bring stability and prosperity to the region.
We emphasize the vital importance of the Development Road Project in terms of this goal. With the Memorandum of Understanding we signed, we reinforced our determination regarding the strategic planning, which will contribute greatly to the stability and prosperity of our entire region, especially Iraq.
Just one problem though. Erdogan's corridor is not the only one. Another corridor was announced at the G20 summit last year, the India, Middle East, Europe corridor. And this one takes a different route. Europe to Israel, Israel to Saudi Arabia and the UAE, and from the UAE to India. A lot of European and West Asian countries are part of this corridor, but Turkey is not. So Erdogan had opposed it. Listen to his comments at the G20. This is what he said: there cannot be a corridor without Turkey. Turkey is an important production and trade base. The most convenient line for east to west traffic has to pass through Turkey. So Erdogan's position is quite clear: no Turkey, no corridor, which is why he's pushing his own. Now, both these routes do have some things in common. They both bypass Egypt's Suez Canal. They also use a network of roads and railways, plus one partner is common, and that is the UAE. It is investing in both the India-Europe corridor and the Iraqi one. But there are key differences too. The biggest one is Israel. The India-Europe corridor had a political motive to tie Israel and Arab states together, to link their economic fortunes. The hope was that this would accelerate normalization, maybe lead to Saudi Arabia recognizing Israel. But all that has been put on hold. Israel is waging a war in Gaza, so Arab states will not be in a hurry to normalize relations. Plus, how can you build a corridor in the middle of a conflict? And Erdogan knows this. He has a short window to push ahead with this project, to complete it before the others. Meaning he could have the first mover's advantage. Of course, there are challenges too. For instance, Iraq may not be a war zone, but security remains a problem there. Multiple Iranian proxy groups operate out of Iraq. They often clash with US forces. You also have remnants of the Islamic State. United Nations data says up to 7,000 ISIS terrorists are left in Syria and Iraq. They could target the trade corridor. So Iraq or Israel, the problem remains the same, security. And it's quite unfortunate really, because the potential is massive. Asia and Europe are two economic giants. Trade between them is almost $1.5 trillion. So there is room for multiple corridors. You have Turkey and Iraq building one. You have India and Europe building one. You also have Iran and Russia planning one. The international north-south corridor, that's what they're planning. These routes could make trade more competitive and cheap, but only if conflicts and petty politics are put aside. Our next story is from the UK, where Prime Minister Rishi Sunak has won a major battle. The British Parliament has finally passed the Rwanda Bill. It's a controversial law. It allows the UK to deport asylum seekers, packing them off to Rwanda, a country in East Central Africa. The British Parliament has passed this law. Now it awaits the monarch's approval. When King Charles III signs it, the law will come into force. So what does this really mean? What is this Rwanda Bill? Why is it controversial? How will it work? And will it really help Rishi Sunak? To make sense of this bill, we'll use a metaphor. Do you know what a scarecrow is? It's usually a figure or model made of straw, shaped like a human, and put up on a farm. What is the scarecrow's purpose? As the name suggests, it is to scare away crows. It looks like a human being. The hope is that crows will think it is a person, believe it is dangerous, and stay away. The straw figure acts as a deterrent. It deters or discourages crows from landing in the farm. And that is exactly what the UK's Rwanda Bill is, a deterrent with no real power, but something they hope will keep immigrants away. And here's how it works. The Rwanda Bill says that immigrants can be deported. Not all illegal immigrants, just people who arrive from a safe country, like France. Migrants often enter the UK via France after crossing the English Channel on small boats. Now, everyone who has entered the UK this way, from France, is eligible for deportation, illegal immigrants. That's about 52,000 people. They can be sent to Rwanda without having their cases heard in court. So far, these refugees got to approach British courts. They could ask the court for asylum, but not anymore. Even if a refugee's case is genuine, it will be Rwanda's call to make. The UK is washing its hands of the matter. Now, on the surface, this law sounds like it has teeth. Everyone who entered illegally will be kicked out. No court hearings, no exceptions. But think about it for a moment. 52,000 people is no joke. Imagine having to round up that many immigrants, then putting them on flights without hurting them in the process and making sure they're medically fit to fly, also simultaneously fighting off legal challenges from lawyers representing these migrants. How fast do you think the UK can accomplish that for 52,000 people? Let me show you some figures, in fact. The maximum number of people that Britain deported in 1 year was about 15,000. 15,000 people in a year deported. This was way back in the year 2012. Since then, the number has decreased to about 5,000 a year. That's how many people they're able to deport. Even if Rishi Sunak manages to bring deportations back up to 15,000, it would take him 3.5 years to send the migrants to Rwanda. And these are the 52,000 presently in Britain. It'll take him 3.5 years. Meanwhile, more of them keep coming. Last year, almost 30,000 migrants came via the English Channel. So if you do the math, the Rwanda plan doesn't really work. Unless, of course, the people stop coming. If they're too scared to come to the UK in the first place, if the channel crossings stop, if the inflow is lower than the deportations, only then will the UK's illegal immigration problem end. And that, you could say, is the real purpose of the Rwanda Bill. It is not so much about sending people to the African country, it is about scaring people who are thinking about entering the UK. Now, Sunak has been given permission to put up a scarecrow, and his plan is already in motion.
But we are ready. The first flight will leave in 10 to 12 weeks. Now, of course, that is later than we wanted, But we have always been clear that processing will take time.
Sunak says the first flight will leave in 10 to 12 weeks, which means July. It's still a few months away, but look at the impact.
If, before I came here, you say that, they sent to me in Rwanda, I never come here.
Would you have come to the UK if you'd have known you could end up in Rwanda?
Never. Never.
Do you think it will stop other people coming now?
Yeah. I say to all asylum, don't come into UK.
So it seems to be working already, acting as a deterrent. If this continues, then Sunak may actually bring immigration numbers down, but we will not know for sure until the first flights take off, until July at least. So we have to wait and watch. But Rishi Sunak did win something yesterday. He won a major political battle. His flagship immigration law has passed, and this has happened just before the election. Now, we know that Sunak is deeply unpopular. His party is set to lose the next election. So if he can get even one symbolic flight off the ground to Rwanda, he might win back some votes for his party. Politics, after all, is more about emotions and messaging than facts or effectiveness. So Sunak has a new election gimmick. What about the other side of the story? What about Rwanda? Well, they're getting millions to take in the refugees. They've already received £290 million. They'll get another 100 million at least, plus £20,000 for each migrant they take in. And £120 million after just 300 migrants reach Rwanda. Sunak's office has refused to make the final bill public, but Rwanda is definitely making a fortune, thanks to British taxpayers. So the African country might be the only real winner in this story. Now let's talk about the India election. One phase of polling done, 6 more to go. It will be a long summer for political leaders who are campaigning across the country and making their pitch to the voters. They now have to contend with a new and disruptive force, something that some of them are also trying to co-opt. I'm talking about artificial intelligence, deep fakes. They're causing all kinds of chaos. AI is being used to spread fake news, resurrect dead politicians, and even fabricate endorsements. It is rampantly being used to influence unsuspecting voters, and it seems the regulators have no idea of how to tame this new beast. Our next report explains.
What do Amir Khan, Ranveer Singh, Narendra Modi and Rahul Gandhi have in common? On first impressions, not much. But in recent months, they've all been targets of deepfakes. Videos of Amir Khan and Ranveer Singh were used to conjure up fake endorsements.
जो भारतवर्ष है अब अन्याय काल की तरफ ऐसे बढ़ रहे हैं.
A few weeks ago, Prime Minister Modi was complaining about fake videos featuring himself, while Rahul Gandhi's face has been morphed repeatedly along with other opposition leaders for campaign ads. Some of these deepfakes were easy to recognize, but every instance highlighted a disturbing fact. Each of these clips was watched by millions before they were flagged, and in several instances, many of these videos are still online. A flood of deepfakes is hitting India's election season. The scale of it is hardly shocking. Nearly 1 billion people are eligible to vote in this election, and almost 900 million Indians have access to the internet. Given this scale and reach, internet spaces in India have become a battleground for political parties to fight for votes. And AI tools are now quickly becoming the most formidable weapon in the hands of politicians. The technology is widely available and inexpensive to use, but that's not the most compelling reason for politicians to access AI. AI-powered campaigns are giving politicians their most sought-after asset, attention. Voters aren't just noticing AI-driven political ads, they're also absorbing and engaging with its message. For Congress leaders like Vijay Vasant, AI tools have successfully revived the memories of his father, the late H. Vasanta Kumar. Back in the day, he was a popular politician. His son has used the AI-generated voice of his father to stir up nostalgia and seek votes. More politicians from the south have used the same tactic, like Tamil Nadu's DMK and AIA-DMK. They have used AI to reproduce the voices of their leaders like Karunanidhi and Jayalalitha.
வேறுபாடு இருந்தாலும் அதை
In eastern India, the left took the AI campaigning one step further. Instead of a fake voice, they used a fully AI-generated news anchor for their campaign efforts.
In another incident in July 1995,
There is a barrage of AI-generated political content across all major internet platforms, with little being done to contain it. The vulnerabilities have been highlighted by the tech giants themselves. A few weeks ago, Microsoft warned how countries like China and North Korea may target the Indian election and use AI to influence votes. Leading developers have responded by limiting access to political content on their AI apps. But so far, it hasn't been enough. In the absence of clear regulations to monitor AI systems, India's election will remain a playground for deepfakes.
So technology is everywhere, which also makes it a target. Just look at your social media platforms. WhatsApp is banned in China, X is banned in Pakistan, and TikTok could soon be banned in the US. In some cases, there are legitimate concerns, but elsewhere, it's just politics. Let's look at Pakistan first. They suspended X in early February during the elections. It's been more than 2 months now, and the platform is still banned in Pakistan. Do you know why? Let me quote the government's response. This is what they said. The decision to impose a ban on Twitter or X in Pakistan was made in the interest of upholding national security, maintaining public order, and preserving the integrity of our nation. How about that? Your national integrity does not come from social media. If it does, you have work to do. But let's be honest here. We know the real reason behind this ban. Imran Khan's followers have used X to rally support. They have bypassed the ban using VPNs. So if the ban is lifted, they would flood the platform, which is why X remains unavailable in Pakistan. Their foreign minister was asked about this by a US publication. The Pakistani foreign minister. Listen to his response. May I ask those countries that have put a ban on certain apps? So one country is okay, but Twitter banned in Pakistan is not okay. Now, to give you some context, the minister was talking about TikTok in the US. Last weekend, the US House passed a bill that could ban the app. It's basically an ultimatum to TikTok. Sell your US business within a year. If not, your app will be banned in America. Both Democrats and Republicans have passed this bill. It's part of a broader foreign aid package. Next week, it will head to the US Senate, and after that, to Joe Biden's desk. How is TikTok responding to this? Their position has always been clear. We do not share data with the Chinese Communist Party. Any ban would trample on free speech. That's what TikTok says, and it has been sticking to that position. Now, just to be clear, a ban is not a certainty at this point. If Joe Biden signs the bill, TikTok can move the courts. They can say it's a violation of free speech, which brings us back to Pakistan. When they banned X, the US was quite angry. Washington asked Pakistan to restore access.
We are concerned by any report of restrictions on the exercise of the freedom of expression and association in Pakistan, including the partial or complete government-imposed internet shutdowns, which includes, of course, on social media platforms. We continue to call on Pakistan to respect freedom of expression and restore access to any social media that has been restricted, including Twitter, I think now known as X. We have and will continue to emphasize the importance of respecting these fundamental freedoms during our engagements with Pakistani officials.
I guess the foreign minister had a point, the Pakistani foreign minister. If the US can ban TikTok, why can't Pakistan ban X? Logically, it's a fair argument, but it also reveals the problem. Social media platforms have become so powerful nowadays. They can influence elections. They can shape public opinion. So every government wants to control them, or in some cases, ban them. These governments may give different excuses, but the end goal is always the same, to control the political narrative. And social media platforms are guilty too. For 2 months, X has been banned in Pakistan. Did you hear a word about it from Elon Musk? No. His company said it is working with the Pakistani government. Compare that to his response in Australia. Regulators in Australia asked X to take down a video. It was footage of last week's church stabbing in Sydney, an incident which has been called terrorism. And guess what Musk did? He refused. Musk says the video has been censored in Australia, but he will not do it elsewhere. So Australia's Prime Minister has lashed out at Elon Musk. He's called him an arrogant billionaire.
Well, this guy is showing his arrogance. He's a billionaire over there in the United States who thinks he's above Australian law. And he's fighting for the right to show violent videos on his platform, something that can cause damage to young people, we know, and a great deal of distress, something that will add to social division.
In this case, the government is right. The Sydney church attack triggered violence in the city. Hundreds of people clashed with the police, 2 officers were injured and 10 police cars were destroyed. So Australia was right in taking on X. But Pakistan is not. The only question is, how do you make this distinction? You do it by building a case. National security and integrity are vague claims. You have to narrow it down. You must explain how social media is hurting your country. Australia did it, Pakistan did not. Let's see how the Americans do next. And now let's turn to Europe. Though maybe that's a poor choice of words, because it seems Europe is getting turned around. Reports have come out about GPS services in Europe. Over the last few months, there have been a number of problems. Flights are losing their bearings. Their GPS signals frequently get scrambled all over Europe. Thousands of flights have had GPS services jammed, particularly in the east. So, of course, all fingers are pointed at Russia. Reports say Russia is jamming the GPS, that Moscow is a menace to European flights, or that Russia is putting innocent civilian passengers at risk. But is that really the case? Or is there more to it than meets the eye? Here's our report.
How do you look for directions these days? Most likely through an application on your phone. It points out where you are and marks your destination. Well, airlines use the same system too. Not a mobile app, but the same navigation system, GPS. It stands for Global Positioning System. So what happens if the GPS is down? Do planes end up getting lost? Of course not, because all planes have backup systems, something to switch to if there's a problem with the GPS. But look at these headlines. GPS spoofing is now affecting airplanes in parts of Europe. Airlines report GPS signal jamming. Russia gets the blame. Thousands of flights to and from Europe affected by suspected Russian jamming. That last report came out on Monday. It says that since last August, thousands of flights have been affected. 2,300 Ryanair flights, about 1,400 for Wizz Air, and 82 for British Airways as well. These were all flights to and from the UK. But that's nothing compared to Eastern Europe, where 46,000 flights have faced issues. These numbers are alarming. But is it really a crisis? Is Russia really trying to wreak havoc on civil aviation? If so, then we should have been hearing about more crashes. When you look at the data, things start appearing less ominous. 2 of the reports cited data from a website called gpsjam.org. It shows a map and areas with GPS disturbances. This is the status of GPS over Europe, taken on the same date over 3 different years. The first is February 20th, 2022, 1 week before Russia launched its invasion of Ukraine. Then we fast forward a year to February 20th, 2023. The skies seem redder. GPS is being blocked in 2 major places within Russia and over the Black Sea. Then fast forward to February 20th of this year. GPS has been jammed over more territory. That is why Europe is worried. But think about it from Russia's perspective. It is fighting a war. Its opponent, Ukraine, is using GPS to aim drones on Russian territory. So Moscow has scrambled GPS to defend its skies, and it has blocked potential entry points abroad, like the Baltic Sea region or Eastern Europe. So it looks like a defensive move by Moscow, not an attack on civilian flights. And Russia isn't alone in this. Look at Israel. Its skies on April 4th this year, when it was expecting an attack from Iran. GPS was jammed in Israel as well.
No, it's not work. It's saying that we are in Beirut.
But the Israeli people understood why.
There are some warnings that cruise missiles or UAVs may be sent here, something that is GPS guided. I understand that they are trying to disrupt this, and that is basically the idea.
So Russia may be doing the same thing for defense. But don't Russians need GPS for navigation? Not really. Russia has an alternative called the Global Navigation Satellite System, or GLONASS. Other countries have similar satellite services as well. India has the Indian Regional Navigation Satellite System, or IRNSS. China has its BDS, the Beidou Navigation Satellite System. And the one Europe has is called Galileo. Russia relies on its GLONASS while it jams GPS signals. It also has other systems to fall back on. So Moscow can jam GPS without worrying about domestic problems. Other countries too need to develop their own systems, or they risk becoming collateral damage in someone else's war.
It's that time of the year again. The slumber of winter is over. In some parts of the world, it's time for cherry blossoms. In others, it's heat waves. But in the corporate world, it's a completely different season. The season of appraisals. It's an annual rite of passage for all of us. A time for evaluation and reflection, both for employees and employers. So what will this year's appraisal season look like? 2024 kicked off with mass layoffs. Companies fired people, jobs were automated, artificial intelligence threatened livelihoods, and the global economy continues to struggle. In the midst of all of this, employees have just one question. Will they get a good salary hike this time? A new report looked at companies in India, and here's what it found. The average salary hike this year will be around 9.5%. which is a little lower than 2023. The average last year was 9.7%. So there is a slight dip. And the report says it's because of shifting business sentiment. So 9.5% will be the average. Of course, a lot depends on your industry. Some may see a greater pay hike like engineering firms and fintech companies. Others could see lower raises like e-commerce and startups. For Indian startups, it's a particularly gloomy season. Funding has been lackluster, layoffs have loomed large, their employees are used to double-digit raises, but this year they may have to settle for less. Most of the startups plan to keep their increment below 20%. In fact, 62% founders, according to a survey, echo this sentiment. Some, however, want to defy trends. 6% say that they may dole out raises close to 40%. I would say congratulations to those employees, you're beating the trend, but overall, it will be a subpar season. And we say don't lose heart. Take solace in the fact that there will be some sort of increment. Because now a new trend is also catching on. It's called dry promotion. What does it mean? Imagine you get your increment letter. You open it in anticipation. You see a brand new designation. Your heart jumps with excitement. And then you looked at your revised salary. No change there. It's the same as last year. You may think it's a misprint, but chances are it's not. What you've got is a dry promotion. Your job title changes, you may have more work, you may have more responsibility, but when it comes to monetary compensation, there is no increase. Basically, you get to do more work for the same salary. That is a dry promotion, and more companies are opting for it. In 2018, only 8% companies worldwide were doing this, offering new job titles instead of money. Now it has risen to 13%. And it's a reflection on the state of the job market globally. You may remember the Great Resignation, when employees put in their papers and companies spent millions trying to retain them. Then came the global economic slump. The job market contracted, there were fewer jobs on offer, and that gave companies the upper hand. They could hire for lesser money. It weakened the bargaining power of employees, and I guess they know that. Expectations from this appraisal season are modest. Apparently, most people are already looking out. 82%, according to one survey. 82% people want to switch jobs for different reasons. 54% want leadership roles. 41% want more transparency at the workplace. 38% demand remote work options. So to sum it up, this appraisal season will truly be a mixed bag. Below average raises, lackluster increments for startups, dry promotions, and looming attrition. These are the defining trends. Of course, that does not mean that your increment will be like this. A pay hike is a very subjective issue after all. It depends on a lot of factors like your boss, your performance, your company's earnings, and so on. So here we are only talking about the broad trends. We cannot predict your increment. We're not fortune tellers, although it looks like Gen Z is turning to astrology for answers. Career-related queries are apparently at an all-time high. Digital astrology platforms have seen a surge of almost 60%. Users are also opting for live sessions like tarot card reading to understand which way their career will go. But if you don't want to leave it to stars and cards, here are some things that you can do that can help you in this appraisal season. First of all, know the rules. Understand how appraisal works in your company. Second, highlight your achievements. No one knows what you've achieved better than you, so talk about it. Perception is key and you must actively shape it. And third, be honest. Self-evaluate, discuss with your manager and tell them what you want. All of this can help you in the long run. Also, don't beat yourself up for factors that are not in your control, like your company's financial health. A career is not a T20, it's a test match. You need patience and persistence to play the long innings. And you also need faith in yourself. Push hard for what you deserve because no one else will. In 2017, Saudi Arabia announced NEOM, a mega city built in the middle of the desert. It was supposed to be a futuristic, car-free utopia, but looks like the project is running on fumes. Do you know why? Because NEOM has a $500 billion price tag. It's too much, even with all that oil money, $500 billion. So now Riyadh is changing tack. It is courting more and more investors. This week, hundreds of investors will visit the mega city. They will look at the progress and hopefully want to invest. Riyadh is also chasing Chinese funds for the project. But will that be enough for NEOM to take off? Our next report tells you.
Mirrored skyscrapers, flying taxis, billions of trees, glow-in-the-dark beaches, a fake moon. This was the plan for NEOM, a futuristic Saudi megacity being built in the middle of the desert. NEOM was announced in 2017. It was Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman's brainchild, a way to diversify the kingdom's oil-dependent economy. It was billed as humanity's chapter, but the project had a $500 billion price tag, and that has since raised eyebrows. Architects questioned its viability, while investors questioned the cost. And the project hasn't made much progress. In 2022, MBS unveiled the line, which will run a 170-kilometer straight line through the desert. It was expected to be 33 times the size of New York City. MBS said by 2030, its population would exceed 1 million. But reports suggest otherwise. First, the project is moving very slowly. It's supposed to be 170 kilometers long, but only 2.4 kilometers will be constructed by 2030. Also, new projections say that only about 300,000 people will live in the city by the end of the decade. So it's nowhere near the original plan. And that's because of investment. Most of the money for NEOM has come from the Saudi Sovereign Fund. Foreign banks have been hesitant to provide loans. That's because the project doesn't have a government guarantee. Investors too have steered away from it. They question its viability and future. You see, the idea of NEOM may sound grand, but there's a lot of mystery surrounding it. How it's being built, where it's being built, what the final vision will look like. All of that has affected funding. So Saudi Arabia has a new plan, a show and tell for investors. Hundreds of bankers and investors will descend upon the megacity this week. They will be shown the progress. The idea is to dispel any doubts over it, to show investors how much work has actually been completed. Riyadh is also conducting investor roadshows. It just took its NEOM roadshow to China. NEOM officials visited Beijing, Shanghai and Hong Kong, all to court Chinese investors. No deals have been signed yet, but Riyadh is now heading to Europe and the US. The idea is to secure as much funding as they can. Because while the project may be MBS's crown jewel, Riyadh has realized one thing. It needs consistent and sustainable foreign investment to make NEOM successful. Because a cutting-edge city may be easy to imagine digitally, but building it in the middle of a desert is no cakewalk. And right now, Riyadh's vision definitely doesn't match its reality.
The fancy serum that you eyed now blends in with your skincare products on the shelf. What was once a heady romance has morphed into a familiar face across the dinner table, and your roommate's yell has turned into background noise. Things that once amazed or appalled you become ordinary over time. And this is a common human phenomenon. Scientists have a name for it. They call it habituation, where people respond lesser to stimuli that repeat. Sometimes this can be a good thing. It increases your threshold to deal with an annoying boss or the traffic in your city. You get used to it. But sometimes it also creates problems. When things seem too ordinary, a routine sets in and welcomes its best friend, boredom. Soon every day appears to go in a blur. So is there a way out? Can you stop time from flying by? According to researchers, yes, you can. And science holds the answer. A new study is out. It urges you to seek out newness. If days are whizzing past you, try something new. This could be a new activity or an old one in a new setting. And how will doing new things help you? It will slow down time. Not literally, of course. If that were true, anti-aging creams would go out of business. Newness is for the clock in your brain. When you try something new, your brain is more focused. It collects unfamiliar information and it works harder. Now, this experience seems to have lasted longer. Let me explain with an example. Think about your time as a child, when most things were new. So you were constantly creating new memories. Now, when you look back at your summer holidays as a child, you think of them as long, fruitful and fun. But as an adult, this summer is like any other. Some ice cream here, a vacation there, and summer whooshes past you, which is perfectly normal. Routine is a part of life. We do the same things over and over, and we are rewarded with productivity, precision and speed. But there are some downsides as well, like monotony and boredom. And this is bad for companies. Disengaged employees can cost employers an additional 34% of their salary through absenteeism and lost productivity. It is also bad for people. It causes stress and insomnia. It increases the risk of depression and anxiety, fuels poor performance and breeds lack of motivation. So it is a good idea to escape the same old routine. And perhaps try this. Step 1, cut down on pseudo fun. Basically, leisure activities that do not inspire playfulness or connection, like doom scrolling on social media or binge watching Netflix. Try avoiding that. Once that happens, go to step 2. Try something new. This could mean setting big goals, like learning a new language. It could also be something small, like potting a plant or doing something you've always wanted to do but never could, including things you wanted to master as a child, like riding a bicycle or learning how to swim. It is daunting to be a beginner as an adult, but learning is not just for the young. So pick any activity. It can be creative, whimsical, quiet or challenging. Anything goes as long as you're having fun with it. You engage with it, and many benefits will follow. Studies prove that you will feel refreshed, happier and less stressed. You'll also be more productive, creative and favorable to outsiders, and in a state of feeling focused and present. You'll be less self-critical. But most of all, you will make memories that may last forever, quite literally. And now it's time for Vantage Shots, images that tell the story. In Malaysia, 2 Navy helicopters collided mid-air, killing 10 crew members on board. In China, cars were swept away by floodwaters after heavy rainfall in the south. And in Canada, a train caught fire while travelling through downtown London. And finally, we are taking you back in history. On this day in 2006, the first video was uploaded on YouTube. It showed YouTube co-founder Javed Karim at a zoo in San Diego. Titled Me at a Zoo, this video has since garnered 317 million views. We're leaving you on that note. Thanks for watching. We'll see you tomorrow.
really pretty much all it is.
India has successfully navigated multiple shocks we've seen in the recent past, starting from the pandemic to the war in Ukraine and then the recent tensions in the Gulf. And so given that, we against that backdrop, growth at 6.8% in 2024-25 is a very impressive number, and this is largely led by private consumption and public investment. I don't see any red flags in the near term, but I would highlight one important aspect. India is a young, growing population. India is likely to add about 15 million people to the labor force every year. Now, if you want to benefit from this demographic change, you will need lots of reforms. I think in particular, I would emphasize the need for significant investment in education, healthcare, so that this growing labor force can contribute productively to the economy.